Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Beyond Second Cognition. I'm Beall. The topic of this discussion is, what is news? In our modern cultures, news is considered the media where people report current events and instantaneous happenings. People that get locked into watching CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and all this, they're considered news junkies. But the fact of the matter is, most all of you are news junkies. How many of you know the origin of the word news? Back in the old days, when the feudal lords and kings owned the land and people were only serfs on the land, they were not allowed to travel very much at all. They lived compartmentalized lives, working as sharecrops or whatever, working for the king. So they didn't get out very much. So they had to wait for merchants or other people who lived outside their village to bring them updates of happenings in the world outside where they were not allowed to go or visit. And when these people brought their stories in, it was new to the inhabitants living on these feudal estates. So people craved the news because they were kept in isolation. They were not able to move beyond the land they inhabited as serfs to their kings and whatnot. So the traveling merchants and things of that nature became the news bearers. And people always wanted to know what's new. And this is the origin of news. Now, in our modern vernacular, people call a news junkie someone who tunes into the news stations. But the fact of the matter is, it's deeply ingrained in the human psyche at this point that we're all news junkies, because we're all looking for that something new. That's why people go through these YouTube videos looking for something new to pacify their interest for that newness. They always want the new answer or the next answer. And so they go through these videos and these websites, and they're always looking for something new. Unfortunately, most people don't pause long enough with what information they do receive or do come across to reason it out very much, because they're too busy jumping on to the next bit of news or newness that they can find to pacify this curiosity and basically an internal drive for something new. So this is the origin of news. And every one of you that is going through these videos and going through books and things like that, you're looking for something new. And most of you don't pause long enough with what you found to digest it, reason it out very much, cogitate it. You deal with the superficial dynamic presentations, particularly sensationalist bullshit. You know, all you got to do is look at the tabloid papers in the supermarket to see how people buy sensationalism. And unfortunately, our press, our modern media these days, is nothing but town criers. That's all they do. They keep trotting out the new expectations, just like when they had the Gulf War and they broadcast it on TV. People sat glued to the TV wanting to know what the new event was going to be, what's going to be the instantaneous change. And so folks go out to YouTube and they start looking for the next dynamic information. Oh, we found a clue to Atlantis. We know what the ancient giants were. This is the latest update from God. I mean, you know the stuff that's out there. You're looking at it. But do you know what drives your psychological imperative to want to know the new stuff, the news? And this is where it comes from. This is the origin of the term news. The traveling troubadours back in the old days were also the news bearers, except they carried the news through songs. They presented new ideas through ballads and things of that nature. And this is how music started to become a tool for cognitive control. So you need to look at why you do the things you do. You know, how many of you have ever contemplated what news means, what the origin of the word is, and how it affects your own psychopathy? Another thing we do is we use expressions. You know, I'm going to pick one, that we use in America, the whole 9 yards. How many of you people know the origin of that term or actually know what it means? Back in the old days, they used to sell bolts of cloth, and the bolts of cloth in its entirety was 9 yards long. So if someone didn't want to buy a cut of cloth, they wanted the whole bolt, they would buy the whole 9 yards. And this is the origin of the term. A lot of the vernacular we use has a basis in fact where it originated. How many of you people think about this shit, or you just mouth off the terms and think you know the origin of it and what it actually stood for? News is the same way. You have a crave for something new. And most of you don't pause long enough to look at, digest, and ponder what you have digested before you're jumping off onto the next new thing, looking for that excitement of news. So the news isn't just media presenting political facts and current events. News is anything that satisfies your insatiable curiosity for something new. Anything new is news, folks. What I'm trying to present here is take time to ponder what you digest. Don't just take everything new and move on to the next new thing, because what you do is you wind up with an accumulation of information that you don't know shit to do with. You don't know how to interpret it. You don't know what a deeper meaning it may possess. You just want the next new thing. So stop falling for the bullshit. Realize what you're doing. It's a psychological habit. It's almost like an addiction. It's almost like a drug. Have to have something new. Just like all these people with all their new phone apps and all this other kind of stuff. No one pauses long enough to ponder anything other than what the next new thing is. What's the next app? What's the next update? What's the next dynamic information that's going to thrill my consciousness? And so by jumping from one new thing to the next new thing, you never really learn anything. You're running yourself on superficial hype, always trying to get that news fix, whatever news it may be. I just thought I'd put this out there to help you people understand your addiction. And for those of you doing the work, stay the course. Don't give up on yourselves.